In the depths of history, beneath the surface of every conflict, there lies a truth that transcends borders, beliefs, and politics. A truth so powerful it can change the course of nations. And that truth is this: the real person behind every fight, every war, and every act of defiance is not a leader, not a nation, but a spirit that moves within the hearts of men and women. When we talk about Iran, America, and Israel nations, caught in the eternal dance of discord, what we are really seeing is not just a clash of ideologies, but a clash of wills, of spirits, of hearts longing for meaning, for purpose, for peace. Each of these nations has its own story, its own faith, its own journey through history. But behind every moment of struggle, there is a deeper, often hidden force at work. Today we must ask ourselves, what is the real source of this conflict? What fuels the fire that keeps nations at war? And what will it take to bring them to peace? When we look beyond the headlines, beyond the noise, we must begin to see the true battle, the battle within the hearts of those who lead, those who follow, and those who yearn for a world of hope and healing. This is not a battle of nations. This is a battle of the Spirit, a battle of faith. And the question before us today is this: what kind of faith will carry us through? For centuries, the faith of nations has been the root of their struggles. Nations rise and fall not just because of political decisions, economic shifts, or military might, but because of the ideologies, beliefs, and faiths that underpin them. Faith, whether in the form of a belief system, a way of life, or an unshakable sense of identity, has often been the driving force behind a nation's actions, decisions, and direction. In the case of Iran, America, and Israel, faith is not merely an abstract concept. It is the lens through which each of these nations views the world and defines their place in it. But what if the faith that has divided us for so long, the faith that we cling to so desperately, is not the one we were meant to have? What if the very beliefs that we have entrusted with our destinies have in fact become the source of our division, fear, and conflict? Faith is meant to be a force for unity, a source of strength that pulls people together, that brings them to a place of peace and understanding. It is supposed to help us transcend our differences and see beyond the barriers that separate us. Yet, when we look at the world today, it is clear that faith is often the very thing that keeps us apart. When we speak of Iran, America, and Israel, we are not merely speaking of three nations. We are speaking of three ideologies, three belief systems, each with its own interpretation of what is true, what is just, and what is right. These faiths have shaped the lives of millions, and yet they have led to clashes, misunderstandings, and wars. Each of these nations believes that its way is the right way, that its faith is the truest, and that its interpretation of the world is the one that must prevail. But how did we get here? How did faith, which was supposed to bring peace and unity, become the cause of such strife and division? The answer lies in how we have come to understand and practice faith. Over time, the original, pure essence of faith has been distorted. It has been used as a tool for control, for power, and for domination. In every corner of the world, faith has been manipulated to serve the interests of the powerful. Those in power have taken the words of faith and bent them to fit their own agendas, and in doing so, they have shaped the very beliefs of their nations. This is not to say that the faith itself is inherently divisive. It is not the fault of the faith, but of how it has been wielded. Faith in its truest form is about connection. It is about recognizing that we are all part of something greater, that we are all bound together by a higher purpose, a higher calling. But when faith is used as a weapon, when it is twisted to serve the needs of the few at the expense of the many, it becomes a force that divides rather than unites. When we look at the faith of Iran, for example, we see a nation that has been shaped by a deep, centuries-old connection to Islam. A faith that emphasizes the sovereignty of God and the submission of the individual to divine will. For many in Iran, faith is not just a part of life, it is life itself. It is the lens through which everything is viewed, the foundation upon which the nation is built. Yet this faith has also been the cause of conflict, as interpretations of Islam have been used to justify political and military actions that have brought Iran into opposition with the West and its neighbors. The faith that should be a source of peace and unity has instead become a line of division, a battleground on which the future of the nation is fought. Similarly, in America, faith has played a central role in the shaping of national identity. The country was founded on the belief in freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, principles that are deeply rooted in a certain understanding of God's will. For many Americans, faith is synonymous with the pursuit of these ideals, and their belief in God's plan for their nation has led them to see themselves as a beacon of hope for the rest of the world. But this faith, too, has been twisted and manipulated over time. It has been used to justify wars, to conquer lands, and to impose ideals on other nations. And just as in Iran, faith has become a point of division, not just within the nation, but across the globe. The belief in American exceptionalism, grounded in faith, has often come at the expense of others, leading to a sense of superiority and an unwillingness to listen to those who do not share the same belief system. And then there is Israel, a nation born out of faith, a nation whose very existence is tied to the promises made to the children of Abraham. Israel is the fulfillment of ancient prophecies, and for many Jews, their faith is not just a personal belief, but a national identity. It is the belief that they are the chosen people, the ones who have been given a special purpose in the world. But just as the faith of Iran and America has been twisted, so too has the faith of Israel. The belief in a divine mandate to possess the land has led to a long-standing conflict with Palestinians and other Arab nations. And the faith that should have been a source of hope has often been used to justify actions that have led to division and violence. This is not to say that faith itself is bad or that it is the cause of all conflict. The problem is not with faith, but with how it has been understood and applied. Faith in its purest form is not about superiority, domination, or exclusion. It is not about drawing lines between us and them. Faith is about connection, about understanding that we are all part of a greater whole, that we are all children of a loving Creator. But when faith is hijacked by fear, by pride, and by a desire for control, it becomes a weapon that separates us, a force that builds walls instead of bridges. So the question must be asked, what if the faith that has divided us is not the faith that was meant to bring us together? What if the faith we hold so dearly, the faith that has shaped our identities and our nations, is not the faith that can heal the world? What if the true faith, the one that transcends borders, that transcends religions, is waiting to be discovered? It is time for us to look beyond the faiths that have divided us and to seek the truth that lies beneath them. The world does not need more division, more conflict, or more violence. The world needs a faith that unites, that heals, and that brings peace to the hearts of all people, regardless of their nationality, their religion, or their ideology. It is only by rediscovering this true faith that we will find the strength to break free from the chains of division and step into a future where peace, love, and unity are not just ideals, but realities. Forgiveness is one of the most profound and challenging concepts in the human experience. It is easy to speak of forgiveness when there is no real pain, no real wound, no real conflict. But when we are faced with the deep scars of betrayal, the losses that have shaped our very being, forgiveness seems like an impossible choice. And yet, it is precisely in the moments of our greatest pain that forgiveness holds the power to change everything. In every conflict, whether between individuals, nations, or cultures, there comes a moment when the possibility of forgiveness can alter the course of history. This is not a forgiveness born of weakness, but a forgiveness born of strength, courage, and the willingness to look beyond the offense to the deeper need for healing. When we think of the ongoing conflicts between nations like Iran, America, and Israel, forgiveness often feels out of place. How can we forgive the sins of nations, the wars fought, the lives lost, the years of hatred and division? How can forgiveness bridge the chasm that separates peoples and ideologies? And yet, this is the very challenge we face today, to find the strength to forgive, not in spite of the pain, but because of the pain. The process of forgiveness does not erase the hurt or the injustice. It does not ignore the suffering that has been inflicted. What forgiveness does is give us the ability to move beyond the pain, to release ourselves from the grip of anger, bitterness, and resentment, and to step into a place where peace can begin to take root. Forgiveness is not an act of forgetting. It is an act of choosing to let go of the past in order to free the future. Nations, like individuals, have a tendency to hold on to their wounds. They cling to the stories of past injustices, the battles fought, the wrongs done. These memories become like chains. binding them to a cycle of conflict that seems impossible to break. The pain of the past becomes the justification for the actions of the present, and the cycle continues. But what if forgiveness could break that cycle? What if we could choose to see beyond the mistakes of the past, beyond the hurts that have been inflicted, and choose a path of healing? What if we as nations could find a way to forgive not just the others who have wronged us, but also ourselves for the ways in which we have perpetuated the conflict? The challenge of forgiveness is not just in offering it to others, it is in receiving it. Nations like Iran, America, and Israel are often caught in a struggle to justify their actions, to defend their choices, and to protect their honor. Each side believes that it is in the right, that it is the victim of the other's aggression, and that it has been wronged beyond measure. But the truth is that in every conflict, no one is entirely innocent. Each side has made mistakes, each side has caused pain, and each side has contributed to the suffering that continues. This is the reality of our shared humanity. We are all imperfect, all capable of both great good and great harm. And in this reality, forgiveness becomes not just a choice for the other, but a choice for ourselves. To forgive is to free ourselves from the hold of anger, to release ourselves from the toxic grip of revenge, and to open the door to the possibility of reconciliation. For a nation to forgive, it must first acknowledge its own wounds, its own mistakes, and its own role in perpetuating the cycle of violence. This is not an easy thing to do. It requires humility, a willingness to face uncomfortable truths, and a deep recognition that true peace can only come when both sides are willing to step into the uncomfortable space of vulnerability. Forgiveness is not about excusing the actions of the other. It is about recognizing that healing can only begin when both sides are willing to confront their own darkness and to make a conscious choice to move forward in a new direction. When a nation like Iran, America, or Israel can come to this place of humility, it opens the door to a new way of thinking, a new way of being. It allows for the possibility of a future where the past no longer holds dominion over us, where we are no longer slaves to the wounds that have defined our histories. But forgiveness also requires courage. It takes courage to forgive when the wounds are still raw, when the scars are still fresh, when the world is watching and waiting to see what we will do. Forgiveness is not the easy road. It is not the path of least resistance. It is the road less traveled, the road that requires us to lay down our pride, our desire for revenge, and our need to be right. It requires us to acknowledge that the pain we carry is not just a personal burden, but a collective one, shared by all who have been affected by the conflict. It requires us to let go of the need to control the narrative, to let go of the need to be the victim, and to step into the space where healing can take place. When we talk about forgiveness, we are not talking about an easy solution to a complex problem. We are not talking about a simple forgive and forget mentality that dismisses the depth of the wounds and the complexity of the conflicts. We are talking about a radical, transformative act of grace, one that requires us to look beyond the surface of the situation and to see the deeper human need that is shared by all. Forgiveness is not about erasing the past. It is about choosing to move forward together in spite of the past. It is about recognizing that the future is worth fighting for, that peace is worth striving for, and that we are all better when we choose reconciliation over retribution. It is time for nations to come to the table of forgiveness, to lay down their weapons of division and to take up the tools of peace. It is time for Iran, America, and Israel to recognize that their destinies are not bound by the cycles of conflict, but by the choices they make today. Will they choose to continue the path of division, to let the past dictate their future? Or will they choose the radical path of forgiveness, of healing, and of unity? The choice is theirs, and it is the choice that will determine not just the future of these nations, but the future of the world. Forgiveness is not just a hope for peace. It is the very foundation upon which peace can be built. The true battle we face, both individually and collectively, is not always the battle we see. It is not always the one fought in the open, on the battlefield of war or politics. It is often a much deeper, more insidious battle, one that takes place within the very hearts of individuals, communities, and nations. This battle is not one of physical might or territorial conquest. It is a battle against something much more powerful, much more pervasive: fear and pride. These two forces, though invisible, have shaped the course of human history. They have been at the heart of almost every conflict, every war, every division. They are the driving forces behind many of the struggles we face today. Fear and pride keep us trapped in cycles of misunderstanding, hatred, and separation. They prevent us from seeing the truth, from embracing the possibility of peace, and from stepping into a future of healing and reconciliation. Fear is one of the most primal human emotions. It is a survival mechanism built into us from the moment of our creation. Fear is what protects us from danger, from harm, from the unknown. But fear, when left unchecked, becomes more than just a protective instinct. It becomes a force that drives our decisions, our actions, and our beliefs. It distorts our perceptions of the world, making us see enemies where there are none, creating divisions where there could be unity, and leading us to act out of self-preservation rather than compassion. Fear is what keeps nations in a constant state of alert, always ready to defend themselves against imagined threats, always prepared for war, always suspicious of the other. In the case of Iran, America, and Israel, fear is a constant companion. Iran fears the West. America, in turn, fears the rise of radical ideologies, and Israel fears the loss of its sovereignty. Fear fuels their actions, shapes their policies, and drives their rhetoric. It is this fear that perpetuates the conflict, keeping these nations locked in a cycle of mistrust and hostility. Pride, on the other hand, is the other side of the coin. While fear is driven by the need for self-preservation, pride is driven by the need for self-affirmation. It is the belief that we are superior to others, that our way is the right way, that our beliefs and actions are justified. Pride is what keeps us from seeing the humanity in others, from understanding their pain and their perspective. It is pride that makes us believe that we are entitled to what we have, that we deserve what we want, and that others must bow to our will. It is pride that fuels the desire for domination, for control, for the imposition of our beliefs and our will upon others. Nations that are driven by pride believe that they have a right to impose their values, their culture, and their way of life on others. It is pride that makes it difficult to reconcile, to listen, and to understand. It is pride that says, "I am right and you are wrong," without ever considering that there might be truth in the other's perspective. When fear and pride combine, they create a toxic mix that leads to conflict, division, and war. These forces blind us to the common humanity we share, to the possibility of understanding, and to the chance of building a peaceful future together. If we are to break the cycle of conflict and division, we must first acknowledge the role that fear and pride play in our lives. We must confront these forces head-on and choose a different path, a path of humility, understanding, and courage. This is the only way we will ever move beyond the cycle of division that has plagued our world for so long. Nations must choose to rise above their fear, to look beyond the threats they perceive, and to recognize that their enemies are not as different as they seem. They must choose to put aside their pride, to humble themselves and listen to the voices of others, to see that the truth is not owned by any one nation, but shared by all. This is not an easy task. It requires a willingness to step outside of the familiar, to challenge long-held beliefs, and to embrace the uncomfortable truths that have been buried for too long. It requires a deep commitment to peace, a recognition that true peace is not achieved through power or domination, but through understanding and reconciliation. The battle against fear and pride is not one that can be fought with weapons or with rhetoric. It is not a battle that can be won through military might or political maneuvering. It is a battle that must be fought within the hearts of individuals and nations. It is a battle that requires each of us to examine our own fears, our own pride, and our own assumptions. It is a battle that asks us to be brave enough to confront the darkness within ourselves, to recognize the ways in which we have allowed fear and pride to guide our actions, and to choose a different way. This is not an easy path, but it is the only path that leads to lasting peace. The journey begins with a willingness to look beyond ourselves, to see the other person not as an enemy, but as a fellow human being, as someone with their own fears, their own dreams, their own pain. It begins with the recognition that we are all in this together, that we all share the same hopes, the same desires, the same need for love, for safety, and for peace. As nations, as peoples, and as individuals, we must choose to lay down our fears, to put aside our pride, and to embrace a future that is grounded in humility, in understanding, and in love. We must choose to see one another as equals, to listen with empathy, and to act with compassion. This is the only way that we will ever break free from the chains of fear and pride, the only way that we will ever build a future that is truly peaceful, truly just, and truly healing. The real battle is not between nations, not between ideologies, not between faiths. It is the battle within our hearts. It is a battle for our humanity, for our ability to see the divine in others, and to choose love over hatred, humility over pride, and peace over war. Until we are willing to fight this battle, until we are willing to lay down our fears and our pride, the cycle of conflict will continue. But when we choose peace, when we choose understanding, when we choose love, we will find that we have the power to change the world. As we stand at the crossroads of history, with the weight of conflict, division, and misunderstanding bearing down upon us, there is one undeniable truth that remains. We hold the power to change the course of our future. The battles that rage within nations, between nations, and within the hearts of individuals are not battles we are destined to lose. The true enemy has never been the other side, but the forces of fear, pride, and division that blind us to our shared humanity. The nations of Iran, America, and Israel, like every nation, are not mere symbols on a map, nor are they simply the ideologies that divide them. They are made up of people with hopes, dreams, and hearts that long for peace, understanding, and healing. If we are to move beyond the bloodshed, the bitterness, and the fear, we must first look inside ourselves. We must ask the difficult questions. What fears are we holding on to? What pride keeps us from seeing the truth? What walls have we built between ourselves and those we see as enemies? It is time to break down those walls. It is time to lay down our weapons, not just of war, but of hatred, pride, and anger. It is time to forgive, not because it is easy, but because it is the only way to move forward. Peace is not simply the absence of conflict. It is the presence of understanding, the willingness to listen, to embrace, and to love despite our differences. Only then will we see the power of forgiveness, the power of unity, and the power of faith in something greater than ourselves. As we choose to rise above fear and pride, we choose to step into a future where peace is possible, where healing is real, and where hope is alive. This is the journey we are called to take, together with courage, with humility, and with love in our hearts. Let us choose today to fight the real battle, not against each other, but against the forces that seek to divide us. The future is not yet written, but it is ours to shape. And when we choose peace, when we choose love, we will find that we have the power to create a world where the chains of fear and pride are broken, and where the light of understanding shines bright for all to see.